Hello, everybody. This is Robert Talbert, and I'm coming to you today from my home office here in Allendale, Michigan, in my house. And I'm making another deep dive video to go into all the details about the design and purpose and results of a class that I teach or did teach using alternative grading. In my keynote addresses and workshops I do on alternative grading, there's typically not enough time to go into all the weeds about how things worked. This is what this video is for. I have another one of these videos, and I'll put the link in the description for this video, to another class that I taught earlier. It was a couple of years ago, and you can get in all the details there as well. I'll be referring to it as I go through this one because the outcome of that earlier class sort of impacted what I did with this particular class. Anyway, this is just an off-the-cuff talking about what I did here, and if you have questions about what's anything whatsoever, you can feel free to leave a comment below the video or reach out to me at rt@rtalbert.org, and I'll put that, of course, in the description as well. So let me begin by just describing this course and kind of what it's all about. This is a course at Grand Valley State University that I teach on the regular called Discrete Structures for Computer Science 1, Math 225. This is the first of a two-semester sequence on discrete mathematics for computer science majors. It's the introductory math course that lays out all the essential mathematical background knowledge that a university-level treatment of computer science should contain and that all CS majors should know. It's a two-semester course, 3 credits per semester, and 225 is the first of those. 325, Discrete Structures for CS2, is the other one. 325 is what I taught earlier. I typically teach a combination of these two courses. Pretty soon in the next upcoming semester, I'm teaching 2 sections of 225 and 1 section of 325. And I really love teaching this course because it's got some beautiful mathematics in it. It is highly applicable. It fits very nicely into the computer science majors' trajectory through their own curriculum. It's taken primarily by computer science majors, but there are also a handful of adjacent majors as well. For example, Math 225 is a required course for our cybersecurity program, and occasionally we'll see people who are getting a mathematics minor who might be from pretty far-flung fields who are taking 225 as for progress toward their minor. But it's primarily computer science majors, and Math 225 is typically students who are in the first and second year of their studies. So 225 and 325 are very interesting courses for me because they're a combination of a lot of procedural work. I mean, there's a lot of like math computations that need to be done. I'll show you the learning objectives for the course, but as you see those, just keep in mind it's a combination of procedural and conceptual in almost a 50-50 mix. There's a lot of computing and algorithms that students need to know how to do, but also a lot of high-level concepts that they will need to demonstrate mastery of, and honestly a lot of writing in the course as well. One particular focus of these two courses is the writing and understanding of mathematical proofs. A mathematical proof is an argument that explains why an abstracted mathematical proposition is always true under the conditions it's stated to be true for. And this is a major component of these two courses, and most students have never touched anything like this except maybe proofs from their geometry classes in high school, and everybody hates those, right? There's also the idea of explaining solutions to problems that are procedural or computational, kind of on the nitty-gritty ground level, but I want them not only to do correct math computations, but also explain why they know their answers are right. So this course occupies a unique position in many computer science programs, not only at my university but elsewhere. Frankly, it's often hated by students because it has this sort of liberal, artsy feel to it. That's why I like it. But a lot of students went into computer science specifically to get away from this kind of stuff and wanted to just write code all day long. But in computer science, it's not just writing code, it's about thinking computationally. And I guess if you had to say in a nutshell what this course is really all about, and it's sequel 325, That's it, computational thinking and becoming good at explaining technical stuff to other people. So that's where the course is situated. We cap our enrollments around 32, so these are not super large courses. We're a teaching-focused university, and very few classes are above 50 at our place. And so that's kind of where the context behind the course. Now, I also need to give a little bit of background about how I approach this particular instance of the course. And there's some information here. So back in the fall of 2024, I taught Math 325, which is the sequel to this course, and I honestly had a lot of problems with cheating and academic dishonesty based on artificial intelligence use. I think a lot of us in higher ed are currently struggling with this issue. And it hit me like a ton of bricks, like a freight train, that I couldn't prove that there was widespread use of AI to cheat, because it's hard to prove anything about AI use after the fact. But I don't know, I have this spider sense about AI. Whenever I see art or music or something like that, or text on the web, this tingle happens in my brain, and frankly, my AI radar in that sense is almost undefeated. And it was going off a lot, and I just really ended the semester unsure if my Math 325 students were really doing their own work. I couldn't prove it. I didn't want to create a police state in my course, but I really struggled with that all semester long. A lot of the choices you're about to see in the syllabus as far as assessment and grading goes are motivated by a desire to triage the situation. A note about our academic calendar: we're on the semester system, and the one that happens in the fall is called fall semester, and the one that happens in the first part of the year, some people call spring semester. We call it winter semester. So that's why this is Michigan we're in, and so it's winter, like 6 months out of the year. So January through April is winter semester. So this semester is actually the one immediately following that fall semester where I kind of got burned by AI use, or seemingly it felt like I did. So what I'd like to do here, I have the syllabus up in front of me, and I will put the link to the syllabus in the description to the video so you can look at it yourself. It's on GitHub, so you can fork it. In fact, I believe all the documents I'm going to show you here are available on GitHub, so feel free to sample from the buffet. Before I get into the nitty-gritty details, just an overview of kind of how I think about course design with regards to things like grading and assessment. So if you know my talks, you know that we really stress what are called the 4 pillars of alternative grading. And the very first of those pillars is clear standards, clearly stated standards for learning outcomes. And that just simply means that in any course, students should have a clear idea of what it is they're expected to know, and also a clear sense of what they're going to have to do to provide sufficient evidence of that knowledge to me. I can't look inside a student's brain or soul and know that they understand something or have learned something. They have to do something concrete to give me a sense of what's happening, whether they know the stuff or not. And so we just want to be clear about that. And so when I look at any course, the very first thing I do is I scan through the course. If we have a textbook, I look through the textbook materials and just kind of isolate all of the important learning goals that I feel like students should demonstrate. That organizes the whole course for me. Now, for me, in this particular course, as I mentioned, this is I don't want to say 50-50, but it's a pretty even split of procedural, on the one hand, stuff that you do, computations, stating definitions, sort of like the lower 1/3 of Bloom's taxonomy, and the conceptual, which gets into that upper 2/3 of Bloom's taxonomy, where there's applying things, analyzing things, evaluating, and finally creating things. I think of my students' work in a course along a 3-dimensional axis. And I'm going to hold up my 3 fingers here to talk about the x-axis, the y-axis, and the z-axis here. And everything that a student does in the course, and everything that I base the student's course grade upon at the end of the semester, is some combination of things that happen in one of those 3 axes direction. One of those axes, which I would think of as like the x-axis, is simple, basic procedural knowledge. Okay, things that students do that's on a somewhat low level in terms of computation and fundamental knowledge. This stuff is very important. When I say low level, I mean like the foundation of a house is low level. It's the lowest part of the house, not in terms of importance. In fact, it's maybe in some ways the greatest importance if it's on the lowest level. But these are things that are foundational knowledge. That's the x-axis, the basic stuff you should know. And then on the y-axis is more conceptual knowledge, and that I conceive of as taking the stuff on the x-axis, the basic procedural foundational knowledge, and doing something with it, whether it's solving a problem, writing a proof, crafting an application, writing code. And so there's the basic knowledge on the x-axis, and then there's applications of the basic knowledge on the y-axis. Those two axes form the fundamental content of the course. And I think of learning objectives for my course as kind of been going in both of those directions. There's a third axis too that I think of, and that's engagement with the course. Engagement is a tricky word to define. It refers to involvement, commitment, simply doing the stuff you're supposed to do on a day-to-day basis in the class. It's not content specific, but it is behavioral. And so you can get a little nervous about grading this stuff, but I think it's important. Like I think we learned in COVID that, for example, attendance is important, and I want students to attend my classes, right? I run a flipped classroom, and so I need students to do the out-of-class work in that flipped classroom, for example. So the components of the course grade in this class, before I design any alternative or non-alternative traditional system for my class, I'm thinking about how the learning outcomes, what I want students to actually produce in the class, how that breaks down. And again, it's along three axes: basic knowledge, applications of that basic knowledge, and engagement. So the very first thing that I did in this class is actually the end of the syllabus, so I'm going to zoom way down to the bottom here, and that is set up the learning objectives for the first axis, the x-axis, okay? That's the procedural knowledge. And as you can see here on the screen, and again, if you want to take more time with this, just click the syllabus link that's in the video description. And that's what I call learning targets. There are 15 of these learning targets. Out of all the stuff that my students encounter and hopefully absorb and internalize during the semester, I was able to kind of narrow it down to 15 distinct learning targets. And you can see what they are here. So they're all very procedural. In fact, they're so procedural that each one begins well, maybe if not begins, and pretty soon it has a verb attached to it. Like take a look at number 6 here. It says, given a predicate, whatever that is, I can state the free variables and determine whether quantified forms are true and false and state the negation. That's a little triple-barreled, I understand, stating a free variable, determine truth or false value, and stating its negation. Some of these are actually like one target composed of 3 actions, okay? If that's the case, then each of those 3 actions individually is not really substantial enough to assess, but if I package them together, I can assess the complete knowledge of a learning target through asking students to do all 3 things. So it's not a one-to-one correspondence of these learning targets with actions. Okay, some of them are. I can perform arithmetic operations on binary numbers, for example. Although if you know a little bit of what I'm talking about here, that's actually 4 things: addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. This is a course where one of the things that students should know how to do, because it plays into their later courses, especially in computer architecture, is know how to do basic arithmetic with numbers that are 1s and 0s only, not in the normal base 10 that we humans use. And I don't want to assess just addition and just subtraction separately. You'll see how I assess this. I assess the totality of arithmetic by a combination of 4 different operations. And most of my learning targets here are like that. It's one thing that I'm assessing or will assess, and again, you'll see examples. But it's a combo of maybe several thematically related smaller things that individually don't rise to the level of assessing, or at least I don't want to create quizzes after quizzes after quizzes on such small things, because I'll be in grading jail if I do. I need to caffeinate myself too, by the way, because this is a fairly long video probably. So these 15 learning targets, you'll notice that some of these are labeled as core. There are actually 6 of them labeled as core, and you can see them. These are of all the learning targets that rise to the level of I need to assess these at some point. And by the way, that's how these became learning targets. I went through everything that students could encounter in the course and asked myself, sure, it's important or it's cool, but am I going to commit to assessing it? Because if you know the 4 pillars of alternative grading, the 4th pillar is reattempts without penalty. So if I commit to assessing something, that means I'm going to commit to reassessing that thing potentially many times, several times. And if I have 30 learning targets instead of 15, that's double the grading load. Is it really going to be worth it? Am I going to be able to humanly accomplish this? And the very first time I taught an alternatively graded course, I did this, what I'm describing here, and ended up with 63 learning targets and just couldn't say no, and it was just awful. So these days I cut stuff out and I only focus on the bare essentials. The next time I teach this course, I'm shooting for 10 learning targets, actually, just to kind of cut things down even more. The core targets are, of all those 15, the most important things you need to know for several reasons, the biggest 2 of which are, I also teach the 325 sequel to this course, and I know that all 6 of those are fundamental knowledge. Like, we will be using those every day, and you got to nail these. If nothing else, you got to nail these 6, or else you really can't be allowed to proceed on to the next course. And I also know that one of our accrediting bodies for the computer science program, it's actually not an accrediting body, but just like a governing body, the Association for Computing Machinery, has a list of essential topics in computer science. And it doesn't list all 15 of these, but it does list these 6. And so those 6 are labeled as core because the ACM says so. Okay. And so keep an eye on those core ones. Those are going to be the fundamental sort of foundational knowledge that students should need to demonstrate. And they're all very procedural. Okay. Slightly conceptual on some things. Okay, now not appearing in this syllabus really anywhere are associated learning targets that are conceptual in nature, where students have to take these things and apply them or do something additional with them. You could try to craft some of those like conceptual learning targets if you want to. And I tried this when I first conceived of this 3D axis concept of courses. I tried it. I tried coming like procedural learning targets and conceptual learning targets. And the conceptual learning targets ended up being too specific. They were over-determined. Right? There's nothing specifically that I need to see from students that shows that they can take, for example, recurrence relations and apply them to certain things. I just need to know that generally speaking, students can not only work with recurrence relations on a very basic level, but apply them to something. And I like having the freedom of deciding what it is I would like students to do to show me that they can apply that knowledge. And I like the idea of having students be able to choose what they should do to apply that knowledge. So I would like to assess later on in some way or another whether or not students can take this basic knowledge there in learning target 8 about recurrence relations and apply it to some real situation or prove something about them. But I don't want to corner myself here at the beginning stage of designing the course to say specifically what students will do, like at the level of specificity that the learning targets say. So this is a learning outcome that I'm going to assess, but I'm not going to decide, like ever, honestly, until it's time to write the assignment. I'm not going to decide how specifically to assess it, or like which particular problem I'm going to ask students to do. Okay, I'll come back to this, but just note that the y-axis in this system, the applications of foundational knowledge, is something that I want to assess somehow, but I'm not going to state specifically what students need to be able to do, like I do here. Now, I will also just say, as far as the z-axis, which is engagement, that third dimension, I'll show you how I do this in just a minute. There are some specific things, but you'll see. Okay, so anyway, that's the layout and the learning targets. Now, let's, I'm not going to go through the entire syllabus here. You have access to that, but I do want to talk now about how I will assess these things, okay? And that starts down here, I don't know, that's like a quarter to a third of the way through the syllabus, okay? So the mastery of these basic building block skills, which I call learning targets, the skills are called learning targets. They are assessed through things called learning target exams, okay? What these are, briefly, are periodic in-class exams that are given that cover a chunk of learning targets, okay? These exams are, again, given in class, on paper, minimal technology, okay? What students are allowed to use is basically a four-function or scientific calculator, something that doesn't connect to the internet and does basic work. Many of these learning targets don't even need calculators. They're things you do with words, okay, like stating the free variables in a predicate, like you saw a little earlier. Okay, these are cumulative. Each exam is cumulative, so the first exam covers learning targets 1 through 4. The second exam covers learning targets 1 through 8. The third one does 1 through 12. In fact, at the very bottom, there's a schedule for when these learning target exams happen. Not at the very end, apparently. I have it up here somewhere. Did I mention that this was off the cuff? There we go. So there's the 4 learning target exams, and you can see the coverage is sort of cascading, okay? And also the final exam, we don't really have a final exam in the course. We just use the final exam period for one last gasp at assessing yourself on learning targets. So this is, I'm going to jump ahead here to talk about reattempts without penalty. When I give the learning target exams, okay, they are cumulative, so if you take learning target exam number 1 and you attempt learning target number 2 on it and it doesn't work out for you, you can reattempt it. It's baked in. In fact, there are 4 more reattempts automatically on the calendar. Learning target 2, for example, first happens here on January 27th, and then it will happen again in your next exam on February 17th, and then it will happen again and again and again. And there were even more opportunities that I built in as we approached the end of the semester. I would like to jump out and show you an example of a learning target exam, and I'm going to go to my top-level directory here and assignments, and they are down here somewhere. I'm just going to, I didn't have all of these here. Here's the very first learning target exam. Just a word of note here, sometimes the math doesn't render perfectly on GitHub like this, so just bear with me. So I mentioned learning target 2, and this is one that says I can take a positive integer and convert it from one number base to another, whatever that means. So you can see learning target 2 asks students 3 things, okay? It's 3 instances of the verb that I am spelling out in learning target number 2, okay? Going from one base to another. In the first question here, for example, you're going from base 16 to base 10. The second one, you're going from base 2 to base 10. And the third one is always go from base 10 to base something else, okay? That's what students are asked to do on learning target 2. That's in the first learning target exam. So suppose you do learning target 2, and I'll mention how these are assessed and marked later. And it doesn't, like, you don't do a very good job on learning target 2, you'll be asked to redo it, and this is what it looks like. I don't think I had learning target, I have learning target 3. I didn't put, for some reason, learning target exam 2 is not on here, but the third one that happens a little further down the line, let's check out what learning target 2 looks like there. And you can see it's the same learning target, it's the same stuff that I'm asking students to do, 3 instances of the verb that is in the learning target. It's just different numbers, and I'm having students go between different bases, okay? Whereas before, for example, on exam 1, students were going from base 16 to base 10. This time they're going from base 8 to base 10, and so on. So it's the same thing, and students don't know, but it's different details, okay? Creating multiple instances of these learning target exam questions is super easy. It just takes random number generation, honestly. I could probably have an AI do it or write a Python script to do it. I could and just make out all possible instances, like 20 different instances of learning target 2 before the class even starts, and just copy paste into the exams when they're ready. And you can see going back, learning target exam number 1. Why does it always dump me to the top of that directory? Goes 1 through 4, and then learning target exam number 3, sorry, goes, it's 1 through 4, but also we had introduced 5 through 8, and this one introduces targets 9 through 12. Actually 13. We got a little further in the class than I expected, so I threw an additional learning target on there. That's good coffee. It's getting cold though. And so it's cascading. There are built-in retakes. That's the big takeaway here. Before I go any further on this, let me talk about how I marked those learning target exams. Okay, and we'll talk. This is all x-axis stuff. This is all foundational knowledge. The exams themselves are not graded as a whole. They are the individual problems are graded separately. Okay, each problem is graded separately, and it is graded with one of 3 marks: master, proficient, or beginner. So when a student does learning target 2 on exam whatever, I look at their work and I decide, does it reach the standards for master, or is it just proficient, or is it just beginner? And that's the levels you should be thinking of. Master is the highest level, proficient is kind of in the middle, and beginner is bottom. Now, how do I decide what's the standard for each of these things? Well, I have a separate document here called Standards for Student Work, and this is also on the GitHub repo that's linked in the description. It basically is a document for students that spells out what I expect for correct work and my standards for everything that you do, and goes into the weeds on some things here. But when there's specific stuff for learning targets right here. So you can see here in this document, by the way, I spell out exactly what students are going to be asked to do every time on every learning target exam and what success looks like. Okay, so down below, oh, actually, you know what? I think this is actually pointing to, oh, here it is. No. I just discovered that I didn't actually state what I meant I'm using old marks here. Okay, this should have been master, proficient, and beginner. This is actually, I forgot to change this up in my old document here. Wow, I should do these videos more often to correct my mistakes. Change these marks from excellent, success, and retry to master, proficient, and beginner, and everything goes through. Okay, I want to back up a little bit. I'm sorry, guys. I'm all over the place. Apparently, this is something I'm just going to describe exactly what these master, proficient, beginner things happen. So let this be a lesson to all of you. Don't do what I just did and be unclear about what the standards are. I think that this is maybe this is the right one. Nope. Okay. Well, let me just explain exactly what success and success in this column here. Okay, this is embarrassing, but I'm used to it. Mastery on a learning target problem basically means what you see for success here. Your work is virtually mistake-free is kind of what this is. It doesn't have to be literally mistake-free, except in a few specific circumstances. But basically free of any mistake that would cast doubt that you can actually perform the verb that is in the learning target. Okay, so for example, if you are, let's take learning target number 3, for instance, which is doing addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division on binary numbers. Okay, so there's a lot of room for stupid mistakes or simple mistakes on these arithmetic problems. And if you do everything perfectly but make a very basic error on an addition problem, for example, I'm willing to overlook that if that one mistake doesn't make me wonder if you really know what you're doing. Okay, so not perfection mastery, but pretty much perfection. Okay, if there's any mistakes involved, then there's not terribly many of them, and they don't cast doubt on your ability to perform the task that's in the learning target. That's my overall rule for master. Proficient means you're doing some good work here, okay? But there's like at least one mistake that does cast doubt on your ability to carry out the verb that's in the learning target, or there's a whole lot of careless mistakes. A whole lot of careless mistakes that don't necessarily individually pertain to the learning target. I don't think you've mastered that learning target yet. You're proficient, okay, but you're not a master of it yet. Beginner is like below proficient, okay? Either sometimes it's like left blank, or it's an obvious guess, or you're just doing the problem wrong. It's not demonstrating mastery of the learning target in any way. That's what beginner means. Okay, so I reckon I need to go fix that document the next time I use it, which is coming up pretty soon, actually. But that's how those learning targets are graded. The exam is not graded, the problems are graded. So it's possible you could take a learning target exam, for instance, and do only some of the problems. Like it might be learning target exam number 2, and you just still have no idea about learning targets 7 and 8, but you're good on the other 6. So you can skip 7 and 8 if you want to and just take them at the next exam. Or you can try it, and if you do, the worst thing that could happen is that you get marked beginner. Okay, but you might be marked beginner on one learning target, but master on all the other 7. Okay, so I go through and I pick which I do problem by problem by problem. Okay, and because it's a very simple rubric, just master, proficient, beginner, this doesn't occupy more time than if I were just putting points on things and then summing up at the end. In fact, I find that it takes way less time to do it this way. So I want to go back to this, excuse me, to the syllabus and talk about these. Not this yet. That's coming. These learning targets again. So again, just because I landed here, no point values on this. It's just my call based on a standard that I need to be more clear about and get the document fixed about master, proficient, and beginner. Okay. If you only master counts, okay, in terms of what I'm going to show you for course grade. If you have proficient or beginner, it means you need to reattempt that learning target on a later exam. If you hit master on a learning target, you're done. Like literally done. Never touch this target again on any subsequent exam. So yeah, the first exam has problems for learning targets 1, 2, 3, and 4. The second exam has learning targets 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. But if all goes well on exam 1, you'll master all the first 4, and then all you got to do is the second 4. On the other hand, if you have proficient or beginner on one or more of those first 4, what you should do is plan on reattempting them at exam 2, and then if needed, reattempting at exam 3, and so forth. Now, let me address a question that you might be having. Doesn't this cause a snowball effect with some students who might be struggling with the material and maybe you take exam 1 and get beginner on all 4? Well, then you got to do 8 problems on exam 2, right? And isn't this becoming untenable? Well, first of all, you don't have to do 8 problems on exam 2. You just do whatever subset of those 8 problems you feel like you can get done in 50 minutes and that you feel fully prepped to attempt in 50 minutes, okay? So it doesn't necessarily cause a time crunch on students who are struggling, okay? Again, there are multiple attempts, as you saw on the schedule, throughout the semester for attempts at learning target exams. And at the end of the semester, I build all of my classes on a 12-week plan. We have a 15-week semester, but I designed the course to fit into 12 weeks. And I take a week at the beginning for onboarding and working with students so they understand how the grading system works. And we talk about deliberate practice and academic honesty and AI use and stuff like that. That's what week 1 is for. But then that leaves 2 weeks at the end that have nothing scheduled in them. And so that is a time for just pure additional reattempts as needed. And so sometimes students end up getting 8 or even 9 or 10 attempts at a learning target. And honestly, these learning targets are so low level and so foundational, and we get so much practice on them in class meetings. The class meetings are spent almost entirely with practice on these learning targets, that a student who is unable to master them after 10 attempts like legitimately should not get credit for that learning target. I feel. Okay, I'm giving unprecedented support for students and attempts to be able to master these learning targets. And there's really no reason why a high school educated student who is putting in the work can't master all 15. Okay, that doesn't even talk about office hours. So there is a potential for a time crunch with this cumulative exam thing, but there's a lot of support and a lot of safety valves in place for students to not experience that time crunch. Okay, so that covers how the x-axis is assessed and graded. What about the y-axis, this idea of applications of things? Well, here's where I gotta talk about AI a little bit. So I used to do this through outside of class work, okay? In Math 225, I had this series of assignments called application analysis assignments. That refers to the middle two layers of Bloom's taxonomy called application and analysis. This wasn't like creative, super high level work like a project. It was just simply taking basic knowledge and applying it to things. Sometimes it was writing code, sometimes it was correcting or filling in the blanks on a proof, all kinds of different stuff. As I said, I had a lot of seeming issues with artificial intelligence when I did this in the fall 2024, in the semester just preceding this. Again, I can't prove it. It's very hard. These AI detectors are terrible and creepy and not very effective. But my spider sense was going off all the time, very loudly, that many students were not doing they were turning in application analysis homework, but they weren't doing the application analysis homework. So I made the decision for winter 2025 to take the application. I didn't want to do away with application analysis because then it would leave nothing in that y-axis, and I didn't like that. So what I did was I continued to give application analysis homework. Let me show you one of these homeworks, for instance, under assignments. The homework itself, I think I can show you. Yeah, here we go. I'll just pick number 4 just for kicks. The homework it consisted of some optional practice exercises. If you feel like you need practice, you want me to give feedback on what you're practicing, turn the stuff in. There was always some multiple choice items, okay, required, okay, these are not optional, to get at some high-level conceptual knowledge, and then some problems to solve. This one in particular had 2 problems, and students needed to do both of these, where they were given some Python code that did some of the early learning target work about integer division that I coded up, and I wanted them to work through the code here and explain what was happening and why things were working the way that they were. Okay, so these are the 2 problems. In a previous life, I would give this to students and have them write it up in a PDF or a Jupyter notebook and then submit it online to our course LMS. After fall 2024, when I felt like I got hit with a tidal wave of generative AI use, I came to the conclusion that if something is given outside of class, many students, not all, but many students will use a generative AI tool to do the core portions of their work for them. Some core portion of their work, whether it's actually generating, you can just take this code and copy it and dump it into Gemini, and it'll tell you what it's doing, and it'll work out an example for you. They're getting that good. They already are that good. And so I no longer really trusted the data I was getting from student submissions. But I didn't want to do away with this kind of problem either, because I think it's really valuable. Being able to work through a relatively complex piece of code like this is a fundamental computer science task that goes a little higher than the learning targets. It's not super basic, and I want to see that students can do this. So what I did was I continued to give this homework, but I stopped grading it. Okay, these homeworks were all optional. Okay. To an extent, okay, and I'll kind of mention what extent here in a minute. But the students would turn in this work, write it up in a PDF just like always, and submit or write it and scan it to a PDF and submit it on our course LMS. And then I would go through and I would give feedback to the students on what was working and what they needed to continue to work on, but no grades. No grades whatsoever. As many of you know, I'm a real skeptic of the notion of ungrading or collaborative grading. Some people can do it well. I think it fits some situations really well. For my situation, not so well. And I've always been a little critical of the idea of ungrading, and I can go into that in some other time and place. Here, though, is an example where I think that it was a good idea to adopt it. So I ungraded, or that is to say, didn't grade the homework, but I gave feedback on it. Okay, if students want feedback on what they're doing, they can get it. Now, you might be asking, like, well, what would be the incentive for students to even do this stuff other than just the love of the game? Well, instead of grading the homework, I carved out additional time in class to test students over this homework. Okay, so I created what are called application analysis exams to go along with the application analysis homework. Let me show you one of these exams. I don't know if I have the one that exactly covers what I just showed you, but I have this one here that's a markdown file, so I'll show you this one. Now on this exam here, you will see these are 1 hour exams, just like the learning target exams. They're given in class on paper, and students have minimal technology. What you'll see here is a multiple choice section, and although these multiple choice problems didn't show up on that application analysis homework I just showed you, these are literally from another set of application analysis homeworks that students had turned in and had a chance to get feedback on. And then following the multiple choice questions, there are, I believe, 3 problem groups, okay, 3 groups of problems that are thematically similar. So multiple choice followed by 3 problem groups. The initial versions of all application analysis exams have the problems either directly scraped off of the application analysis homework, or they are very simply adapted, like different numbers are used. Okay. And again, this didn't show up on the homework I showed you, but these are all homework problems. Okay. So here's the deal. So if a student has done the homework and gotten feedback on it and really studied and tried to work with the feedback, they will walk into an application analysis exam ready to just dump their knowledge onto the paper, reproduce it in a live setting, and be done with it and have great success with it. If they haven't, then it's a roll of the dice. Okay, if you feel like you're an extremely capable student with the material, then you are more than welcome to step into an application analysis exam sight unseen and try it out. And who knows, if you might be fine on this, you might do very well, but more than likely you're going to find that you probably should have done some of the application analysis homework in the past. So the homework itself that forms the basis for the exams is not graded, only given feedback. The exams are what's graded. Now, I know that I did this right in the document about standards here. So let's click over to here. How are the application analysis exams graded? Well, those, unlike the learning target exams, which are graded problem by problem, exams are also, the application analysis exams also graded problem by problem, but assembled into a holistic grade. Okay, the standards for these are okay. So they were graded excellent, success, or retry. Okay, excellent, success, or retry. So keep that in mind. Not master, proficient, beginner, but excellent, success, retry. Excellent means that you've got most, if not all, of the multiple choice questions right, and all of the problem groups are done with no major errors and not a ton of minor ones. Okay, I have other parts of this document that explain what the difference between major and minor errors are. So that means excellent. Basically, not mistake-free, but for the most part, it'd be like what an 85% would be if I were grading with points. Success means that you've got roughly 70% of the multiple choice items answered correctly. I didn't always give 10 multiple choice items. That's why I say roughly. And then of the 3 problem groups, you can have one that has a major error in it, but no more than one, and no more than 3 to 5 minor errors. So you can blow it or even skip one of the problem groups, one of the 3 problem groups, but the other 2 have got to be spot on, or you can try all 3 and have maybe one that's got a major mistake in it, but it's isolated. Anything less than success is called retry. Okay, a person who had, this is what's graded on the entire exam is graded with one of those 3 marks. Okay, now a student who has an excellent mark on an exam does not need to touch anything further with that particular exam. A student that has a success on the exam can choose to retry it later, and I'll explain how that works later. But they can also just leave it alone. And why would they even retry it? Well, that has something to do with the course grade, which I'll explain later. And if it's marked with a retry, you got to retry it. So that's how the y-axis worked. I had these, generally speaking, students knew that I wanted them to be able to take the basic x-axis type knowledge and apply it, do something cool with it, and stuff like that. But I left myself some freedom for how that would look, okay, based on individual application analysis homeworks. These were given like every week to week and a half, turned in, not graded, okay, but then tested live on paper, minimal technology in class. I needed to allow for reattempts without penalty on these because I'm a 4 pillars guy, right? So there were 2 of these exams scheduled. I also scheduled 2 retakes, okay, 2 retake days. Where did I put this in? It's on the calendar, which I have separate, but maybe it just suffices to say I have retake days set up for. I apologize if this is causing. Oh, this is not even. I got to go to the syllabus. I had 2 retake days planned out on the calendar. Do I have the dates for those? I should probably look through my materials before hot coding a video here. And it's under the section called How to Redo Your Work. Course grade, I'll get to that in a minute. Grade. How to retry your assignment. There we go. So I had 2 days for reattempting exams, the 14th, 16th. Basically, this is like in the last 7 weeks of the semester, okay? And so if you had a retry on an exam, you could come into one of these dates and retry it. If you had a success on one of those exams and you wanted to bump it to excellent, you could come in and retry it. If you had an excellent on one of those exams, you don't have to do anything. I also had a retry date set up during the final exam in case you wanted to also try these. So I had to make multiple versions out of each application analysis exam. That sounds like a lot of work, but it actually wasn't. I think I have, yeah, here we go. And I also had some makeup versions as well, because whenever you give in-class exams, there's a possibility that a student could get really sick, for example, and not make it to the exam date. And I didn't want students to burn one of those reattempt dates just to make up for being sick. So I also created 2 makeup dates in the semester. So I had to take 6 days out of the semester to arrange for just these application analysis exams. 2 dates for the initial take, 2 dates for retakes, and then 2 dates for makeups. It was expensive. And I had to cut some stuff from the class that I would rather not have cut. But I felt like it was worth it. Every choice you make it involves trade-offs. And so I just did it. Not everybody's in that position to be able to do that, I understand. But I did what I had to do. So just a before and after, this is the original application analysis exam. Let me just focus on problem group 1, which has a couple of counting problems in it, okay, and proving they get a choice of one of these 2 problems, because I believe students should have a choice in how they demonstrate this application knowledge. So there's the 2 for problem group 1. Now in the makeup, which is similar to a reattempt, I don't have the reattempts on here, it looks like. I've got a version 2, but it's a Word doc, and I don't want to mess with that. In the makeup for this one, let's look at problem group number 1. I believe this is a different number 2 problem, and it's definitely I believe that's a different number 1 problem. So it's actually not super hard to come up with similar but thematically related adjacent problems, even though they are fairly high level and fairly conceptual. Again, coming up with new versions of one thing is not terribly time consuming if you're a content matter expert in your field, which you are because you're a professor. Okay, so that's how the y-axis worked. Okay, application analysis homework that is not graded but given feedback, and then assessed live in class with a piece of paper and a calculator if needed on application analysis exams. The exams are marked excellent, success, retry, and I'll mention how that plays into the final grade, the course grade coming up. The last thing to talk about is engagement. Okay, now this is something that I do in all my classes and have done, and that's through the use of what I call engagement credits. I don't want to say points because points make me nervous, but these are points basically. Here's the basic lowdown. I give credits, or let's say points between you and me, but I give points for students doing stuff that they should be doing. Okay, for example, attending class earns you 1 engagement credit. Doing the flipped classroom class prep activities successfully and on time earns you 2. Turning in an application analysis homework assignment gets you 4. So there's an incentive for students to do this. It's not graded, but doing it, good faith effort, complete solution. You tried everything out and gave it a good faith effort to be right. You don't get a grade, but you get 4 engagement credits for doing this. Okay, and I would also sometimes throw in some one-offs. Like I found a really cool article I want students to read. So I said, you read this and fill out this Google form that gives me your reactions. I'll give you 3 engagement credits. So stuff that I want students to do on a regular basis. I don't grade it. That just gets, you get credit for doing it, but it's not a grade item. I don't have like a rubric that I evaluate this stuff on other than completeness and effort, which is just, does it pass the eye test, honestly. And that's engagement credits, and students just accumulate these engagement credits. The course was set up so that if you simply do the 3 things you see there in that table on a regular basis, you will end up with, I think it was like 110 engagement credits just simply by showing up and being a student in the course. Okay, so that's how I did the z-axis. I don't like attendance and engage like non-learning related activities like attendance. I mean, that's learning related, but it's not a demonstration of knowledge. I don't like that stuff mixing too much with the knowledge related parts of the course. Okay. All right, so that's the X, Y, and Z axis. Now, I believe I also mentioned I mentioned the helpful feedback part of this. Like students are getting feedback on everything they do. Okay, I put it on the papers that they do in class. I give it to them in group activities in class. It's a flipped classroom, so students are watching videos and doing some prep work beforehand, and then the entire class meeting if I'm doing my job right, I have set aside for active involvement, generally focused on deliberate practice of the things they're going to be assessed on. Okay, and they get feedback, just verbal feedback from me in that situation, from their peers, and feedback on for example, the application analysis homework that I turn in. Feedback is coming in from all kinds of sources practically all the time, and I think it's helpful. Now, the reattempts without penalty, I think I've already mentioned that. Engagement credits don't get reattempts. Okay, you can't reattempt engagement. It's like you either engage or you don't. But everything else gets reattempts in ways that I've discussed. It's expensive to do that. I will absolutely agree to that, and I'll talk about that just a little bit more later. Okay, so you might be wondering how the course grade is determined. Well, it's real simple, actually. Here is the table that determines the course grade. To get an A in the course, remember there are 15 learning targets, 6 of which are labeled core. If you earn mastery eventually on 14 of those 15, and you have an excellent mark on both of the application analysis exams eventually, and earn at least 90 engagement credits, that gets you an A. And as you can see, the requirements kind of diminish from there. Okay. Notice the application analysis exams. Why would you be incentivized to take a success and improve it to an excellent? Well, you might be shooting for an A, or you might be in a C range where you had success on both application analysis exams. Remember, success means the majority of the multiple choice items are correct, and 2 out of the 3 problem groups are without major errors. That's what success means. And maybe you've done that twice, but you want to get a B in the class, and so you could retake the parts you need to retake on the application analysis exams and try to improve. And by the way, if a student does a retake of one of the exams for application analysis, they do not have to redo the entire exam. They just have to redo the parts that fell short. Okay, that led to some logistical challenges, which I'll discuss here in a moment. And so you can see how this all fits together. It's actually an extremely simple way of determining your grade. It's just 3 things, and it's those 3 axes. You see it, X, Y, Z. It's in each of these columns there. Additionally, each student needed to get a success mark. Again, here's a mistake. Oh my gosh, that should be master mark on all 6 core learning targets. Remember, there were 6 of those learning targets that were core. If you don't earn master on all 6 of those, it's a 1-letter grade penalty at the end. And also, you might be wondering, well, what happens if a student masters 14 learning targets but only makes it to this point on application analysis exams and only makes it to this point on engagement credits? Like, how do you determine the grade? Well, the rule is to earn a grade in the course, you must meet or exceed all of the requirements for that grade. So a student who has this for learning targets, this for application analysis exams, and this for engagement credits, technically would be earning a C in the course. That seems kind of harsh, but 2 things. First of all, not really, because, I mean, we really insist on, in this class, and I feel like throughout all of higher education, really insist on excellence across the board in all areas of assessment. We don't try to average together engagement with learning target mastery. Those are just apples and oranges. It's X, Y, and Z axes. If you know math, those are linearly independent, and there's no combining them. So it's got to be a slice. Okay. However, there are some wiggle. There's some wiggle room here. This is where plus and minuses come in. Let me start with the minuses. To earn a minus on your grade, you satisfy all the requirements except engagement credits. I don't like engagement credits mixing with these other 2, like I said, but so I don't like it having an outsized effect on course grade, and that includes in the negative direction too. So that student, hypothetically, with this, and this, in these 2 columns, they've met the requirements for a B, but not in engagement credits, and so that would be a B minus. Okay. And I feel that sounds about like what a B minus should be. Sure, you did really well on the basic knowledge, but not as well. You were B level on the applications side, so that should draw your grade down. And furthermore, your engagement credits, kind of drug you down. And besides, engagement credits are just dead simple to get. They're stupid simple to earn. You just show up and breathe, basically. So, I mean, that should never happen. Okay, every student should have at least 90, if not like way more than 90 engagement credits. I don't have any problem with that determining minuses. You can earn a plus on your grade though in a couple of ways. You can satisfy all the requirements for a grade, but go 1 level higher on one of these. So let's say that, for example, this student had an 80 engagement credit situation, 14 here, this here, and this here. They satisfied all the requirements for a B and went above and beyond for an A. So that would be for this one. So that would be a B plus. Okay, and I feel like that's pretty good. It's B plus a little bit. And also I have this other provision here. So if you reassessed, I mentioned that the final exam period, we don't have a final exam. It's just one last reattempt on anything you need to reattempt, whether learning targets or application analysis exams. If you master the core learning targets once during the semester and then again at the final exam, like you put 2 layers of verification on the core, you earn a plus. Okay, I thought that would be a good idea, but it turned out not to be a good idea, and I'll mention why here in just a moment. Okay, and so that's how the course grade was determined. And I also want to mention that I had this other thing here. I don't know if I have it here or not, to be honest. I think this is actually elsewhere, and this will mess up the video if I try to access it. But in my a thing that I hand out to students at the beginning of the semester is a checklist, like a paper checklist, that when students accomplish things like I mastered learning target 6, you check it off, and then you can visually see what your grade is. It's a grade tracker that's analog. And so I give out a piece of paper, a checklist. I'll leave the link for it in the video description so you can access it. I just don't want to, it screws things up if I leave this particular browser tab. And so students were very easily able to track their grades. In fact, that's at mid-semester and in week 9, I have students, I tell students, please make an updated version of your grade tracking checklist and send it to me. And that earns them like 5 engagement credits. Okay, so that was the layout of the course. I'm going to go back to the syllabus. I want to mention that, again, on the 12-week plan for my course, I take an entire day out during day 1, and I work with students to practice with this grading system. Okay, I give them hypothetical examples of students who, at the end of the semester, Alice has done this, this, and this, and so what's her grade going to be? Including some weird edge cases, like what happens if you master all 15 learning targets, have excellent on both exams, but like never do any engagement, like you don't even show up for class except to take exam, that kind of thing. That would be an A-, by the way, in that situation. And so by the end of the week, students are not, if not comfortable with the grading system, like fully, they are at least like they are starting to get it and understand how it works. Like there's no points on things, just like you do a thing, you get feedback. Sometimes in class there's going to be timed things that you do and you get feedback on those too, and you just keep doing the thing that you need to do until you're happy, and I'm happy. So what was good about this particular class? I'll just stop here and talk for a bit. What was good about this particular instance of the class? I mean, students really got this idea of alternative grading and the idea of retries. Many of them have been super burned by math classes in high school and in the past, even in college, with points-based grading systems where they've done a lot of really good work, but they blew it on one test or they had bad attendance and then they got graded down for this. And they felt like that was really unfair. And this, I've had students come afterwards and say, like, this was the content and the tasks you made us do in the class were hard, but getting an A was easy because the path was just completely clear, and no matter how hard it got, I could always retry and study the feedback that you were giving. That's exactly what I want to hear. I'm not grading on a curve. I don't even believe in curved grades. I'm not trying to rank and sort. In my view, if every student in this class doesn't get an A, I've failed. Okay. And so students really react quite positively to this once they get it's an intricate and complex system. I get that, and so you got to continually communicate with students and give examples and help them understand things and give them reminders and so forth. If you do that, I find the students are cool with it, more than cool with it. The use of so many timed exams. There was a lot of timed exams in the class. Like we had 4 learning target exams, so 4 days out of the semester, plus 6 instances set up for reattempts, makeups, and application analysis exams. That's 10 days, or over 3 weeks of the class had to be set aside for in-class exams. Now I understand, again, that not everybody can do that. I'm in a position where I know my course really well. I can subtract it down and get it down to the minimum viable product I feel like that provides the right preparation for students. And I can do this on a 12-week plan and so forth. But it was tight. However, it did basically solve my issues with generative AI use, because you can use generative AI all you want, okay, in the stuff you do outside of class, the homework and everything else, but in the end, it's going to be you sitting alone with a piece of paper and a pencil and a calculator, and you've got to be able to do the stuff on your own. So if you want to use AI if you're one of these people where you want AI to solve it and then go back and look at AI's solution and maybe learn it that way, okay, I'm not going to say no to that. I have issues with that, but I'm not going to say no to it. I draw upon my experiences as a musician in this way. Like I play in 2 bands, and eventually, no matter what I do at home in my practice, I could cheat on my practice time or cheat even in rehearsal time. But eventually, it's going to be me. I'm the only bass guitar player in my band, and it's going to be me up on stage, responsible for the coordination of the other musicians in the band, performing for a live audience. Okay, so I'm only hurting myself and other people and creating a terrible product if I cut corners on that. And it's the same thing here with the students. I think students understood that, and I never once had to worry about AI misuse on this. If students were doing it, okay, you're only hurting yourself. But again, the logistical challenge is making room in the calendar for this, and that was I did it, but it was hard. Okay. Some other things that didn't quite go off as planned. I mentioned on application analysis exams to do a retry on these. For example, if you had a retry mark, or if it was just success but not excellent, you did not have to redo the whole exam. You only had to redo the parts of the exam that needed to be retried. For example, if you kind of screwed up majorly on 2 out of the 3 problem groups, you don't have to do the other one that you got right. the grade book in our course was just not set up to communicate this information out to students. Like, it's not granular. I couldn't put like success, but you got to retry this one. I had to keep track of that separately. In some cases, records got lost. Students lost their papers, and they didn't know which sections they were supposed to retry. And they showed up to the retry session. It's like, well, I don't know. Could you tell me which ones I need to retry? And then I looked, and my records were flawed. And we had several issues, not widespread, but way too many issues with a failure to understand what needed to be retried on this. So if I do this again, this particular way of doing things, I got to keep better records. And I can see that it's probably not possible to do this in an efficient way through an existing LMS, because LMSs are all just universally terrible at this. I think it could be done, but it creates so much more work than just simply doing it some other way that I'm unwilling to kind of go there. So that granularity on the reattempts of application analysis exams has to be rethought. I mentioned at the end how the course grade works with the plus. If you do a double mastery on this, then you can earn a plus. Students really didn't understand this provision here, and so they would show up at the exam not having mastered any of the core targets and just want to take 2 different assessments right there for the first time. And I had to explain, no, that's not what I mean. And there was some concern there. Like, I was planning on getting a plus. So I'm not sure why. I got to explain that better, but probably I just won't even do this. Honestly, it'll just be the first bullet point. Most things are improved by subtraction, I find. So anything that I don't like, it isn't working well, I'm probably going to just kick it out here. It did create this exam forward version of the class also really exacerbated some existing issues that some students have with test anxiety. I mean, to be honest, test anxiety is a real thing. We can talk around it and say, well, the best cure for test anxiety is competence and practice. But still, students face a fight or flight sometimes when they come into these exam situations, no matter how many retries and reattempts and stuff are going to be given. I do not know exactly how to mitigate that. Okay, if I have an exam and it looks like it's high stakes, even though it really isn't, it's very difficult for me to talk a student down who has convinced themselves they're stepping into a high stakes exam situation. I believe that most pedagogical problems are actually communication and scheduling problems, but this is one of the communication, I don't know, it's hard to get that communication across. Otherwise, I would have to say that I didn't hate the way that this test-heavy version of the course did. In fact, I'm probably going to keep some version of this when I come back to this course. I'm on sabbatical on the day I'm making this video here in October of 2025. I'm coming back to this course when that's over with in January of 2026. And when I do, it's probably going to look a lot like this. Of course, I'm going to fix all the screw-ups in my documents, obviously. It's going to look a little bit like this, I think. AI will probably have a bigger role to play. I've become convinced that we're actually underutilizing generative AI tools in most of our courses. Far from thinking like it's taken over everything, I don't think it's present enough in the right ways. I am currently thinking through what right means in that context, and I have some ideas. But I think you're going to see the next iteration on this syllabus is going to have a lot more intentional use of AI in it. But in terms of unintended misuse of AI, I think this test system kind of gets it right. Like the people who are talking about using only blue book exams from this day forward have a point. When you are just there in a room with a proctor and it's a piece of paper and a pencil and you got to just produce, then AI is only of help to you insofar as you have used it responsibly to engage in deliberate practice previously. And I'm on board with that, to be honest. So I'm going to continue most of what you see here. The XYZ approach is one that I've just sort of adopted as my fundamental model for all course design. And the use of discrete learning targets on one axis, application analysis stuff that's assessed live on the other, and simple engagement on the third axis, I think gives a really clear picture of student knowledge that I'm happy to take to the bank if an employer or potential employer comes to me and says, well, you know, Johnny took your Math 225 class and got an A, but what does he actually know? With Johnny's permission, I could actually pull up all this stuff and say, look, here, 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 and here. And that would be satisfying, way more than a whole bunch of points would be. Okay, so if you just sat through this whole video, then you have way more patience than I do. So I appreciate your dealing with my mistakes on the syllabus. We all make them. Hopefully students didn't get screwed up by that. And I wish you the best, and I hope you have great success in what you're doing. And if nothing else, I hope that this has been informative. And if you want to see more deep dives, let me know. If you have questions on anything I've mentioned here, please leave those in the comments, and links to everything will be in the description. So I hope you are getting something out of this video, and best of luck in whatever it is you're going to use it for.